The mid-size four-wheel drive wagon market in Australia has always been very popular and hotly contested. The Toyota Prado is the peerless sales leader in this market and has daylight in second place. But if you look at the next vehicle down the sales charts, it's the Isuzu MU-X. This year, Isuzu has given us a second generation MU-X, an all-new vehicle. Third place in this market is held by the Ford Everest, which is starting to show its age a bit, but it's still very popular with buyers. So we've brought out the top of the line Ford Everest Titanium, top of the line MU-X second generation LST here to see how they go. The MU-X is powered by the single engine choice, which is the venerable 3-litre turbo diesel engine. It's a long-serving engine for Isuzu. It's got a great reputation for its reliability and its efficiency. It's quite an economical engine too. People love it because it's a 3-litre. It's bigger than a lot of the newer engines. They like the capacity, especially when you're thinking about towing and things like that. And Isuzu's got a great reputation for, as I say, its durability. It's been building diesel truck engines for generations. And out on the highway, it gets along okay, but when it comes to overtaking and putting your foot down, you want to have that bit more extra space than you need to leave when you're in the 500 Newton metre Ford. The MU-X's cabin, as you would expect of a car only launched this year, does feel a lot more modern than that of the Everest. The steering column is adjustable for reach and height, and as you see, it's nice and back where I want it. My elbows are bent. It's perfectly positioned, something I can't quite achieve in the Ford. The screen looks like it's almost twice the size of that in the Ford, although it's not quite the case, but it is a much bigger screen for the AV. The leather seats in the MU-X are heated, which is certainly appreciated when you're down here in Melbourne during the winter time. Quite a comfortable cabin, but it's not quite as comfortable as that of the Everest. The Everest feels bigger, a bit more refined, more SUV-like as opposed to light truck-like. We've got our set-piece hill climb here, which is a fairly steep hill. Low range is needed for it, and it's got some big ruts and holes in the hill, which really test the vehicle's tractive ability. Also checks for clearance. It's got a scrape on various spots. But it's a real good test of the electronic traction control system. So to get ready to go up this hill, first we'll select low range, which on the MU-X is via a dial. And we'll point it straight up the hill and see how it goes. All cars now have electronic traction control systems on them, just some are calibrated better than others. We find some four-wheel drives will go straight up this hill quite easily, others struggle. So here we come at the first little obstacle, and the Isuzu is struggling a bit. It's getting there, it's a bit slow to react. Now what Isuzu have given us in the new MU-X is a rough terrain button, which supposedly sharpens up the features for the electronic traction control and transmission and throttle position. So let's give that button a press. There we go. That does seem to be reacting quicker. It's picking up the slipping wheel sooner and getting us up the hill. We're not using the rear differential lock here, but yep, that rough terrain button is more than a gimmick, it's actually working. Kudos there to Isuzu. It's something they've got instead of having the multi-terrain modes, which a lot of cars have now, simply a rough terrain mode. My question is, why isn't it always that sharp? Once you go into low range, you're obviously going off-road, so it should be working as best as possible. Heading back down the hill now, low range, first gear. It's quite easy to control, just foot hovering over the brake. Pitching the rear wheels up quite high, you can feel it happening there. We did find that the Everest made it up that hill pretty much the same way, a little bit easier if anything, and both cars did it easier with their rear differential lock in place. As I was saying, on the hill climb, both these cars, being top spec, are fitted with 20-inch wheels, which look nice around town, but they're less than ideal for off-road work. Thankfully, the brakes are the same size on the top spec vehicles as well as the lower spec ones, so if you were wanting to fit some more off-road suitable tyres, you could get some wheels off a lower spec vehicle, which would be 17 or 18 inch, and offer some more tyre choices. You can hear that engine rattle coming through to the cabin, and something that does let the Isuzu down, for my opinion. The car is quite a refined place, but that engine noise creeping through is something they might want to look at in the future. 6-speed automatic transmission, seamless, works perfectly. Makes you wonder why you'd ever want any more gears than 6 in a transmission. Perfect for us. The four-wheel drive system in the Isuzu is carried over from the D-Max Ute on which it's based, so it's a part-time four-wheel drive system with high and low range. Another feature that really shows the age difference between these two cars, the MUX has an electric handbrake, which is becoming the norm in modern cars, where the Everest still has the traditional handbrake lever. We're just driving along here in high range four-wheel drive, which in the case of the MUX is a locked four-wheel drive, which is quite handy in these conditions. The road for the most part is dry dirt, but there's some real muddy, boggy sections which, if you're in two-wheel drive, it'd catch you out and you could quite easily get stuck here. Little spots like this where you need to be on four-wheel drive and give it a bit of welly to get you through the mud. When it comes down to choosing between the Everest Titanium and the MUX LST, it's really going to come back to what you want from a car. Sure, there's a 10 grand difference in price between the two. The Isuzu that we're in here, that is $63,990, whereas the Everest Titanium is $73,190. So there's a fair amount of difference there. Could buy you a lot of accessories if you were that way inclined. Ford offers the Everest with a choice of two diesel engines. You've got the old 5-cylinder 3.2 litre engine, which is nice and lopey and fairly lazy in the way it goes, or this newer 2 litre bi-turbo 4-cylinder, which has class leading 500 Newton meters of torque. It's a little bit busier in the way it works, but yeah, it's got that extra grunt there when you need it, which is its best quality. It's also a more refined engine, which is something you really appreciate in the Everest wagon as opposed to the Ranger Ute. That refinement makes it quieter in the cabin and a nicer place to drive along. The 2 litre engine is backed by a 10-speed automatic transmission with a on-demand four-wheel drive system. So what that means is it's always in four-wheel drive, but it only cuts in and out as it's needed. And then you can put it into low range when you go into off-road conditions. The Everest is starting to get a bit old now, and it does show its age in its interior features. Its dash screen's smaller than what's become the norm these days, and certainly smaller than what you've got in the Isuzu. The steering column is adjustable for height, but not adjustable for reach. So in my case, having fairly long legs, I'm sort of reaching out a bit further than I'd like to. I'd like to have the steering wheel a bit back closer to me. Things that are common in cars now, new cars have as standard, just weren't available in all the models back when the Everest was conceived. With the new model only a year or two away, you can expect to see all those things come online then. The extra torque of this bi-turbo engine over the Isuzu's single turbo engine isn't really much of an issue around here on these low speed four-wheel drive tracks. Where you do notice is on the highway and overtaking, and certainly when you go out to tow. Now, the Everest has a 3,100 kilogram towing capacity, is probably as much as you want to be towing in this sort of vehicle. But the MUX has 3,500 kilo towing, which is pretty impressive. The cabin of the Everest feels a lot more SUV-like. It's bigger, more spacious, just more comfortable to get into than the Isuzu's cabin. The Isuzu does feel more modern and it does have more features, but it just doesn't deliver as much in terms of refinement. Both these cars are excellent highway tourers. Certainly vehicles you could eat up the outback miles in without any trouble at all. Very efficient engines as well. We haven't recorded our fuel figures yet, but they both should be in the low to mid 9s over this sort of urban touring. Here we are at our hill climb in the Everest Titanium. The Everest has an on-demand four-wheel drive system, so it is a bit easier. You don't have to go via the lock button. So we're in low range. Terrain mode is just set on normal, and into drive, off we go. Now both these cars being top spec, they're running 20-inch wheels and low profile tyres, which is not really ideal for this because a tyre with a bigger sidewall will give you more traction, having a bit more room to move, a bit more sway in the sidewall, but we'll see how this goes. Like the Isuzu, it's struggling a bit, the first hurdle. Those holes there are quite big, but it's getting on with it. You're really feeling it grab when it gets that wheel off the ground. And that's getting us on and up the hill. So like Isuzu's rough road button, that just sharpens up the traction control system, makes it more aggressive to suit different terrain. But like the Isuzu system, I think you want it as aggressive as possible as soon as you go into low range, so why wouldn't it do that to start with? Back down the hill, we'll select first gear, low range again, to give you that control. Parking sensors, driving you nuts. It's another thing that should just switch off when you go to low range. Everest is finding its little skid pans a couple of times there. Yeah, really fairly composed. Once again, it did do it easier using the rear differential lock. The traction control system in the Ford, I think, is a little bit sharper to start with. Driving the new MUX against the Ford Everest, you can really see why these two cars are so popular. Each of them does its job particularly well. And that job is a family transport vehicle, a vehicle that you can take around the country, towing a caravan, going off-road, all those adventures you want to get out and do with your family. Choosing which is the best one depends on what you want. It's almost horses for courses. The Isuzu, being a newer car, it feels newer. It's got more features, it's got a bigger screen inside, better tech, better safety features. So in that regard, it's really a winner. The Everest, on the other hand, it's got that torquier engine. You really feel that power difference. It's perfect for towing and out there on the highway. It's also more spacious and more refined in the cabin. And there are things that I really appreciate, probably over those tech features. So for my money, it would be the Everest. The Everest is a pick for me. I really enjoy driving it. Someone else, they might appreciate those extra features and the better tech. Up to you.